Hello, welcome to the Sweet Talk. Today is Monday, November 1st, 2021, and I am your host, Kim Mattina. And today I'm so happy to have on my show Mr. Patrick Hausammann. And Patrick comes to us from, you know what? I don't even know where you are. Where are you located? Virginia.
Yep, Northern
Okay,
Virginia.
Northern Virginia. So he comes to us from Virginia. He is a supervisor of instructional technology and a tech coach at the Clark County, Virginia. He's also a Google certified innovator, trainer, and educator, a Flipgrid ambassador, a Wakelet ambassador, a WeVideo ambassador, a Common Sense ambassador, Nearpod, and so much more. He's got so many badges. I can't even tell you. So, welcome to the show, Patrick. It's a pleasure to have you on.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Kim.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so, as you said, you listed out some of the credentials. The biggest thing I love doing is being an edtech coach in the school district I've been in for about 10 years. We touch West Virginia, so we're as far up. When I say Northern Virginia, we're literally as far up as you can go. And out of that, on the flip side, I also do some coaching consulting for the nonprofit that my Google Innovator project became, which is unisonedu.org. And it's all about connecting schools to the resources, whether it's PD or just coaching, whatever it might be that they may not have the people or resources themselves to do. So a lot of the work I do is geared towards guiding, helping others to kind of realize their passions, their goals.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, support and paying it forward and helping
Mhm.
others. That's what it's all about. An ed tech coach is so hard. You have to really you have to really know your
Mhm.
staff, and you have to really be with it and provide multiple ways of training and resources. It's a
Mhm.
lot. So I'm glad to welcome you to the Sweet Talk. So I know today, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things with EdTech, but the name of this show is The Magic That Lies Beneath the
Mhm.
Surface of EdTech. So why don't you explain some of that and what you mean, and then we can dive into your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of my biggest things that usually kind of catches people off guard, especially being the tech coach, a lot of people expect you to kind of come in and like, look at this new thing. It's so awesome. It's bright. It's shiny. You got to try this right away. And a lot of times, what I come in with is, well, I love that you're really enthusiastic about this one thing, but we have this thing already that the kids know, it can do the same thing. So a lot of times I try and just at least put a little bit of a step in between so people explore the tools they already have and really dive deeply into them because I really believe that kind of magic beneath the surface of edtech and the tools, whatever it might be, really lies kind of below the surface, and it only comes out when people have enough time to play with that tool, really dive into it, and not just take it at the surface level. For instance, something like Google Slides. It's not just creating slides. You can do all kind of design work and interactives and different things in there. So it gives you a ton more than what it would on the surface. And just because it's not the newest, shiniest, best thing out there, it doesn't mean it won't do amazing things for students, staff, admins, kind of everybody across the board.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you know, when you have the time to really dive in, you really like unlock or really
Mhm.
you realize like what the tools can really do for you. You actually find out how much more efficient you can get your job done and how much more quicker and providing feedback and
Mhm.
grades and
Mhm.
different things. So I totally agree. But the thing is, like the time, like who's
Mm.
really has the time to dive deep. And we're all busy, and that's one of the biggest challenges in education
Mhm.
is the time. So, what do you tell your staff when you tell them this philosophy? How do you convince them to stick with it instead of
Mhm.
like jumping ship?
Yeah, and one of those big things, and I completely agree on the time side of things, especially this year where a lot of us thought things are going to be easier. We're going to be back a little more normal. And it turns out this year really has been harder on a lot of our teachers, and that time crunch is even more of a thing. And I usually try and bring people back and kind of get them on board with the fact that if you can find a way to use some of the things you know, some of the kids you already know, or some of the tools you already know, maybe it's an app smashing where you're putting a couple of tools you know together already. If you can do those, a lot of times the kids have used them already as well. That's going to save you time on two different fronts. Number one, you may not have to teach the kids that tool again because it's one they're familiar with. For instance, just to keep rolling with the example, Google Slides, pretty much all the kids are going to know it by the time they get through a couple grades and things. So they might need a new wrinkle or a new level that you're going to take them to, or help connecting it to another tool. But you're going to ultimately save time because they may already know it. But then also, you're going to save the time. You don't have to teach them, but you don't have to teach yourself either, because you're probably comfortable with Google Slides or Flipgrid or some of those common tools that you can really do a ton with. So that's a time-saving thing there, where you're not learning another tool, you're not teaching a new tool.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know, what's funny is, you know, we assume that they know, you know, these tools, right? So like I assume, like, I'm teaching computer science this year. So I have Chromebooks in my classroom. So I told the kids to, you know, take a screenshot of their program and submit it into the Google form. And the questions that I got, how do I take a screenshot? And this is like on a Chromebook or even on an iPad. So if they were doing it on an iPad, how do I get the screenshot into the form that's on the Chromebook?
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, like, so I totally think I'm going to teach them the basics of the Chromebook now, because I assumed that they knew certain things, you know. So you can't assume that they know how to use, you know, the speaker notes, or add in, you know, links in, and you know, jumping around into different areas of the tool. It's just, you can't assume that. You know, you really can't. And if you stick with one tool, like you said, I think it will make it easier, because like you said, it's less teaching that you have to do. You might have to teach them that one or couple steps, but you don't have to reteach the whole tool, you know. I totally agree. But yeah, the things that you find out as you go along, it makes you realize, like, wow, you know.
Yeah, and you likely remember it was years back now in the edtech world, the term digital native kind of exploded on the scene. And I think, at least in my experience, that did way more harm than good as far as classifying students essentially under that giant umbrella of they're born with it, they know it. And that in some cases is true. They tend to pick things up a little quicker. They might be able to jump into it a little faster and be more comfortable just kind of doing that exact thing as far as jumping in and picking it up easier. But knowing certain tools enough to kind of play with them and maybe scratch the surface doesn't necessarily mean you know how to create something you'd want to be a showcase piece in a portfolio, or something that's to the level you want it to be that shows your mastery of a certain topic. So I
Yeah, I
definitely
totally
agree.
agree.
You really got to know your students and kind of know where they are. I've done a few projects with teachers at the beginning of the year where we introduce a few tech tools. We kind of cherry pick a few we know the teacher really likes to use throughout the year. It really supports their curriculum. It integrates well. And we use those almost on the first day, if not the second day of school, to do relationship building activities. So at the same time you're building those relationships that are going to be really beneficial, you're also then front loading some of that foundational learning of the tech that's going to pay it forward throughout that whole school year. And Mr. Phil Strunk, Mr. P Strunk on Twitter, he's the first one that we really launched this with, and we termed it Apps Days, and it was successful for a number of years and actually started to bleed out into the school and kind of pay it forward even to other teachers, because they would have kids come in knowing those bits and pieces of tech too, and they didn't have to lay those foundational skills, they came in with them.
With them. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so let's hear it. Let's dive right into it. You want
All
me to
right.
share,
Yeah,
add your presentation?
if you would, and it'll be in the chat. It'll also be in the show notes after it. We're going to focus mostly in the world of Google and show some of the different things there. But just to give a quick scroll down through the slide deck, so if you're checking this out afterwards, you're like, we looked at a lot of the Google stuff, but he didn't go into the other things. This slide deck is laid out where you have a title slide for each section. And then after that, you're going to have a bunch of different links that'll walk you through a lot of the things I would talk about if I was doing this entire presentation. And I can tell you the Google part of this presentation has been a presentation in itself. And then if you come down to some of the other tools like Flipgrid, you'll notice there's a ton of different links on there. And the whole point of this slide deck is not to have any links really about a how to or how do you start with this tool. It's really trying to kick it up a notch. And I don't want to just do a response type Flipgrid. I want them to do like a scavenger hunt thing, or I want to build my entire hyperdoc within Flipgrid. And that's where you get into things like flip hunts and hyper flips, where you're taking that tool and you're really kicking it up a notch. And then you have Adobe Spark, a bunch of different resources there. I know we're both lovers of Wakelet, so you can see I actually ran out of room and had to shrink my font down a little bit to get all the Wakelet goodness on there. And then you have slides for Canva, Screencastify, a few more on there for video tools, Book Creator, some formative assessment pieces. And I know we were chatting a little bit beforehand about you were teaching some computer science classes and things this year. So you have different things on there for coding down in slide 12. But again, the whole slide deck is all about, okay, we may use some of these different things. We may scratch the surface of some of them, and we're thinking we want to go a little bit deeper. We want to do more. What are some different options out there that we can do? And that's where this slide deck comes in to kind of let you take that next step and give you some of those scaffolds to make it not a shocking or jarring experience. You have links to examples, tutorials, different things like that, to where you can jump kind of a little bit further into the deep end of some of these different tools.
So, like I can't multitask. So I'm listening to you, I'm putting things in the chat and everything. So I apologize if you said this already, but do you give in this presentation, do you give lesson ideas for some of these tools?
There are different lesson ideas. Some of them are activity based, some of them are entire lesson ideas. For instance, one that's just kind of a tool thing that could build into lessons. You'll see here for Google Chrome, the first one talks about the web store and actually has a link to something one of my colleagues, my friends created, that is this periodic table of Google Chrome extensions.
Oh
So
yeah, I have that bookmark. That's an awesome resource.
so you have Chrome as just in general, it's a browser. But if you start to tiptoe into that those extensions at Chrome Web Store, you have all of that magic beneath the surface of all the different things you can do. Even if you just think about the accessibility side of things that'll do text to speech or speech to text, or and I think it's just a kind of a clone or copy. It's not official yet, but you also have the immersive reader extension that'll read websites, break it down for students, really help them out. And then, of course, things like Screencastify, all of those different things are something that's beneath the surface. Do they do a lesson for you? No. But could a lot of those be components that make all your content maybe a little better, a little easier for students to digest? Absolutely. And that's
Absolutely, yeah.
where you want to take that next step. But as you come down through, you'll see different things on here, like pixel art, for instance. That's another thing in Google Sheets where you might be thinking, boy, I teach social studies. I don't know how a spreadsheet is going to do all that much for me. But when you get into the pixel art, a lot of that, and it has to do with conditional formatting. And shout out here to Eric Kurtz's website, Control Alt Achieve, which will have all of these different things on here where you're going to see, in a lot of cases, a blog post as well as maybe a tutorial video, all of the bits and pieces as far as how to do it. But pixel art is one of those examples that can go into pretty much any subject, because what you can do is tie what color that pixel or that cell in a spreadsheet turns to a question a student answers. So if I teach social studies, I can make that question social studies related. If I teach art or even PE, I could make it tie to those subjects. And then that picture that develops, that art a student makes, is going to be pinpointed to content I want them to do, want them to look at. And it's distinctly then absolutely part of a lesson, if not an entire lesson, as they work their way through.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you can incorporate anything into any subject area, but pixel art is really a fun way to learn about Google Sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can even make like a game out of it, like Battleship. You can
Mm-hmm.
do different things. Like I remember one year I was walking around school, and I mean, sometimes paper and pencil is okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but some teachers had, and this was years ago. Some teachers had, the graph paper, and the kids actually, drew, color coded the cells on the graph paper to make an image. And I'm like, how cool would that have been to do it in Google Sheets, because now they're learning, they're being exposed to spreadsheets, which a lot of teachers don't teach because they're not familiar with it already. It just would have been more of a fun way to get them exposed to it. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love pixel art and some of these things like this in Sheets to go right with what you were saying, to make it less intimidating, not only
Mhm.
for the students, but the teachers themselves. When I try and do Sheets PD or something like along those lines, I don't 100% jump right into formulas and this is how you do graphs and different things. I like to try and embed some of these type activities to start it off so people can see, oh, this is a cool thing. This is completely different than how I ever
Yeah.
saw Sheets. This is fun.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
fun. Yep.
now let's play with some of those formulas and different things. And a lot of times pixel art, if you use it to where they're not just necessarily filling a cell, kind of creating art that way, but if they're actually doing problems, then you can tiptoe or backtrack your way into, this is what conditional formatting is. This is how, if you had student results coming into a form, it'll automatically show you what's above a 70, what's below a 70, color code it for you so that data jumps out. But it's one of those things, again, a little bit beneath the surface that just makes it, gives you a little bit of something else. It doesn't
Yeah,
make you use another tool.
I totally agree.
And just to hit on a few more on the side, and again, you can see there's a bunch on here that we're not going to necessarily get to or go through, but it's really things meant to, if nothing else, kind of pique your interest and kind of make you want to dive a little deeper, take that little bit of an extra step. So I'll jump into a Google Doc next because I was actually just watching today your episode with Tom Mulaney and learning some new tips and tricks of diving a little deeper into Docs. And one of the things that I love in Docs and in Google is using different websites. And Emojipedia is one of my favorites, but this blog post that is linked into the slide deck basically walks you through all the different places you can embed emojis into Google. And do emojis do something spectacular or anything like earth shattering to the doc? No. But if you use, for instance, down here, you'll see I brought in emojis as bullet points. That's just something different the students may not expect. If I put just normal bullet points underneath that paragraph and it said a great president and gave other information under there, those aren't going to jump out or get seen quite as easily, quite as much of an attention grab as putting like a skull icon there. Or we did a Shark Tank project with first graders a couple years back, and I replaced all the bullet points in their script doc with sharks, and they loved it. They were blown away.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know how to do that. What is this magic? And I showed them how to do it, and they're like, I can do that. I'm like, yeah, you can absolutely do that. And they were so in on that project, and part of the reason they were so in was bullet points.
Yeah, so I mean, so a lot of people don't realize that special characters
Mm-hmm.
menu option is even available, because like you said, people just go and they make the bullet points, or they do a checklist from the toolbar. but you can go into the special characters.
Mm-hmm.
You can change the category. You can add all of that in there. There's so much in there that they can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's totally a hidden feature. Like, yeah, I
I love
totally
the
agree.
fact too, and the way that
You can draw your own, right?
the shark was not a good example because I tried to draw that for the first graders and face planted firmly. But if you want like a smiley face, like that's something I can do pretty easily, and then
Yeah.
that's gonna come up. But my shark did not look like a shark, and they're like that's not what we want. I'm like, I
And
know.
they're going to be honest too. So
Yeah, I love the honesty of little ones. It's cuter when they're little. As they get
yeah,
older, it's still honest and it's good, but it's not quite as cute.
it doesn't come across cute anymore.
Exactly. And obviously you can use those emojis down below, but you can also use the emojis in the titles. You can put them in Google Forms. You'll notice here, and I know it's kind of a little small on your screen likely, but I put one in to mark my work folder in my drive so it sticks out, and you'll see I color coded it too. One big thing to remember with file names or folders is if you put that emoji in there, you want to make sure if you don't want to break your alphabetical order that you put it after the words. If it goes before, it basically jumps it all the way up to the top and it's no longer going to be in that nice clean order that you likely wanted it to be in.
Yeah, that's funny. I do the same thing in Google Drive.
Yeah,
For certain folders, just so like I can move there quicker and find it,
Mm-hmm. And that's where people that know me fairly well know that I'm maybe a little too organized. So I have some folders in folders, and there may well be a folder inside of that one, depending on how much I have going on. So having that emoji icon or that color coding really helps to kind of pop it out for me so that I can see it nicely, easily, and be able to jump into things. So I'll hit a couple more of these fairly quickly because I want to be really respectful of everybody's time. And I know we still have a decent amount of time left, but I do want to hit at least a few and a number of the other common apps.
Well, before
Yep,
you go on, Mel
absolutely.
A, she says hello, and she says
Hey,
there's
Mel.
no such thing as being too organized, Patrick.
I like to say the same thing, but I get corrected by I know a few colleagues that love the just search method. They don't use much of any folders at all. They just use the search. They find what they need, but that's not me.
It works for them. I can't be like that.
Yeah, I'm way too type A for that. To be completely honest, I need to know where my stuff is in the row it's supposed to be in, and it's right there.
All right, so go ahead into the next one, okay? Because
Absolutely.
I wanted to make sure Mel knew that I was going to relay that message for her.
Mel is a good friend from the global GEG side, so I'm glad she was able to jump in. So this is actually going to the next slide down in the deck, and I won't go through a bunch of this stuff, but Google Slides is the example I used earlier. It's an example I go to a ton with our teachers as far as something that really gives you a ton of options on the deeper level side. And I'm going to skip the whole section up here towards the top because that's really the section that dives into some of the more commonly used things. And I'm going to come down to the next level sweetness section and just essentially leave it on this screen to just give you a highlight of some of the different things I've encouraged our teachers to use slides for that aren't necessarily the most common things to use it for. For instance, number one, doing things like word sorts. And in Virginia, we have testing items on our exams from the state that are called technology enhanced items. So drag and drop, fill in a blank, different things like that. All of those type of things could be built in using Google Slides. You can do a ton of different social media templates. So even in those elementary grades where the students aren't of the age that should be using them yet on their own, you can give them some experience with it and maybe use that to bring in some digital citizenship as well. And things like magnetic poetry, choose your own adventure stories, stop motion animation, all of these really kind of engaging activities that if you took slides just as a presentation tool, you're going to fall well short of just a wealth of different things it can do. And I'm pretty sure I saw in the chat there too that you mentioned Slidesmania, and anybody in the world of Google Slides, if you've not seen Slidesmania yet, amazing templates out there for free, super responsive to educators and getting them great templates. And just to point it out on here, you're going to see templates on there for choice boards and different things like that, game boards, tons of different things. You can make a copy, put your content in, you're off and running.
This is a great resource, Patrick.
And it is freely, it's on my website out there. You can pull it up. I would recommend bookmarking it versus making a copy, just because I try to keep this updated and adding tons of new things in. It was a little while back now, but not too far back. Micah Shippey was on Casey Bell's Shake Up Learning and just walked you through how to create essentially an app using Google Slides. And our elementary students love the fact that we can walk them through essentially creating a really rudimentary app, but they can have something that they could send their parents a link to, and they have created this app for their parents or friends or family to go through. And maybe that plants a seed for them to want to get into coding a little bit. And then as they get to the middle school and high school, maybe you make a legit app that functions in a Play Store or an iOS store or something like that. But a lot of these things can use a tool, like I said, the kids are comfortable with, they're familiar with, and lay that foundation, plant that seed for them to want to learn more, dive a little deeper into things.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think you definitely have to have like a growth mindset to really think out of the box to use Google Slides like this. We're talking about Google Slides, so I'm going to stick with slides. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these suggestions are really out of the box thinking. If you use presentations as a presentation tool and you don't interact with your students with it or collaborate with it, you're really missing the boat, because it's really a powerful way to collaborate and think out of the box. I know, like, a lot of people. I went to a conference a couple of years back and I saw someone use Google Slides as an app, and it was amazing because they actually changed the page size. They made the template look exactly like the app, and all it is the links. The slides are all linked, so when they click on a button or the image, it goes to that link, which is another slide, and then they go back to the main menu. I mean, if you think about it, it's not really difficult to do. It's just having an idea and implementing it, and even if you presented this to the students, they would run with it, and you show them, okay, change the page size, use this template, now do this, this, and this, or change the color. They would run with it. They really would. And even like the stop motion animation piece for Google Slides. I actually used that one time in my CS class, computer science class, and I said, okay, we're going to make an animation and we're not going to code it. And they were confused. But then when I showed them like all the slides, and just say there was like 100 slides and there was no code, and I actually showed them what to do, they were like, oh, that's really cool. And then they did it themselves. And it's just another way of opening their eyes to the tool. You don't always have to use it as a presentation tool or the way we did it back in the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s. I don't know.
I would absolutely agree. And to me, that's what a lot of this is, and sharing a lot of these resources is just trying to get that door to creak open just a little bit, to open that mind just a little bit to somebody that maybe has done a little bit of interactives, but hasn't jumped to the side of like a full-fledged app. Or there was another Google innovator that converted their entire yearbook over to slides by doing, as you mentioned, the custom page size and things like that, and got away from using super high-end software. And you'll see there's a ton more resources on here. Things like in Google Drawings, and this one blows my mind. I won't open it for you, but I'll just crack it open on the screen there. But Ditch That Textbook, which is Matt Miller's website, has a Google Drawings Manifesto, which if you've never used drawings and you thought, I don't know when or why I would use this, that one page is probably one of the best places to start. And then you have people like Tony Vincent and Learning in Hand that kick it up probably even another notch. But students that have created amazing mosaic art in Google Drawings, created comics, things like that are not just a picture, they're not just doing some of those basic things or bringing word art in. Things like in Jamboard, doing all kinds of interactive things versus just an online whiteboard, bringing in GIFs as a background, things like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so much in this presentation. I'm kind of overwhelmed. Like I wouldn't even know where to start. I guess, so if I wanted to, okay, this is actually Google Workspace. So if I was using a tool, just say it's Wakelet. I'm going to go down to the Wakelet slide. So if you're using Wakelet and you want to try to think out of the box, they should go to the Wakelet section in this presentation and then just check out the links that you have on that next slide. Is that kind of how you sorted this presentation out?
Absolutely. And I'm going to be in the near future make this a little bit more of that app-like interface. I'm going to put a guide page towards the front, almost like a table of contents, so that people can jump there. And then I'll put a little home icon on a lot of these other slides. So as you explore, you'll be able to jump back and forth. But it's set up exactly that way to be almost a choose your own adventure, get introduced to the concept and kind of the gist of what it is, and then explore the tools to your heart's content. And as you see on Wakelet, not just curating, but what if you wanted to put your resume in Wakelet or use it with students, things like that? What are all those different options, subplans, all kinds of stuff like that, that again is just what's that next level thing kind of below the surface that you can get into?
Yeah, and Wakelet, like just to piggyback off of Wakelet, they have incorporated so many great new updates to the platform now that every time I go in there, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I like this. I like that, So there might be, and now they have like the classroom part of it in Wakelet where you can invite your kids to join your class. So they really, came through big time with a lot of their updates to the platform, I'm happy to say. But this is awesome. I can't believe you put all this together. This is a huge amount of information, and it's got, everything is so well organized, and there's so many different ideas, and you even go over like if you wanted to be certified in that app, or if you wanted to take a course, you go over pricing. I mean, you really nailed it.
Yeah. I tried to put a
This was
ton in there.
awesome.
And I looped this slide in towards the end, and it was meant to give everybody a nice laugh after getting kind of the onslaught, the huge piece of information. But it's also something that I kind of worded on purpose. And again, you can see that you're meant to, it's not the Bible, but you put your hand on the computer and then you go through the pledge that you see on the screen, essentially. And I'll just read it off since it's always good to remember it. But I give myself permission to go down rabbit holes in my search of the magic beneath the surface of EdTech. I promise to use my powers for good, share the magic I find, and will tag at least one friend to search for me if needed so my friends and family will know I'm alive and well.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to be checking this resource out. This is definitely going to be one that I'm going to share and pay it forward, because this has got so much in here. I need to go in and really see what some of these resources are, especially for I see, like, especially for coding. I'm looking at the coding slide here. So this was awesome, Patrick. I really appreciate you sharing all this information.
Absolutely.
I am really blown away right now. I can't thank you enough about coming on and sharing these resources for the Sweet Talk community. This is really, I'm really thankful.
And I am extremely thankful to be here. And I put all of my slide decks up on my website, so they are open, accessible. Pretty much every presentation I've done at different conferences is up, and I'd love to connect and keep that learning going. So if you snag something out of here that's really beneficial, tag me in a tweet, send me an email. If you remember PHAS-EDU, put an @ symbol before it. You have my Twitter. Put @Gmail after it. You have my email. Put .com. You have my website. Keep the learning going, and as we both believe in, pay it forward with that learning. Keep helping others. Keep it going.
Definitely, definitely. And I am definitely going to tag you after I check out some of these things to see what I can borrow from you. It's funny because I'm going to be using code.org next week. So I'm curious to see what kind of ideas that you posted in here too. So yeah, this is awesome. I'm really overwhelmed right now. This is awesome.
Yeah,
So
and
I
there is a
appreciate
ton
it.
in there. So my biggest
Yeah.
thing for everybody is pick a slide, pick a tool. Don't try and take the whole thing on. If you're interested in G Suite and maybe you haven't played with Sheets much or you haven't dove deep into slides, just go there. Don't try and take that whole
Yeah.
slide deck on at a time. It's never
No.
presented all at once either. So know that too. The G Suite part is a presentation on its own. Flipgrid,
Yeah. Oh,
presentation on its own.
definitely.
So
Yeah.
pick
I
it
mean, this
apart
is.
and
Yeah, I totally agree because there's so many slides in here, and everything is it's so well organized. Find your tool, go to that tool, and stick with that, and figure out what you want to take away just from that first tool. Don't go through the whole thing because you will get overwhelmed. I totally agree because I didn't expect this at all. So this is something that I'm going to share out with people in my community and definitely refer back to. So I appreciate it, Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up the show for tonight. So let me share my screen. All right. So if you'd like to visit my website, you can go to thesuitetalk.com. That's the SUITE talk.com. And on the homepage, you will find, this episode appear here in addition to the podcast. You can also support my mission and help me pay it forward, just like all of these other sponsors are. Helperbird, Alice Keeler, Mote, Screencastify, Texthelp, Cami, Streamyard, and Slidesmania. Thank you for your support and sponsorship. If you'd like to be a guest on my show, I am scheduling guests now for January 2022. You can fill out this form here, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you'd like to be a sponsor, you can fill out the sponsor form, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you'd like to see any past episodes, you can click on the episode page here, and all of my episodes will appear here in this Google Sheet. There's a lot here. I have to redesign this page because it does take a little bit of time for everything to load, but it does load. I'm not lying. It's loading. There it goes. All right. And if you like to check out any of the books that I wrote, you can click on the books page and you can check out the new book that Alice Keeler and I wrote together called Teaching with Google Jamboard and Stepping Up to Google Classroom. And with that said, I'm going to come back to Patrick. All righty. Well, that's it for today. Next Monday, the November 8th, there will not be a show. So I will see everyone back in 2 weeks. So have a great evening, everyone. Bye.
See everybody.